The bell hadn't rung yet, but the classroom was already loud enough to drown out thought. Teenagers lounged across desks, tapping pens against tables, trading secrets in whispers and bursts of laughter. The sun was pouring in through the tall windows, warm and uninvited, dust particles floating in the golden beams. It should have been an ordinary morning. It should have been just another day of high school chaos. But in every school, there is always one student who feels invisible until the moment they're not. Elena Whitmore sat in the second row, back straight, eyes lowered to her notebook as though it could protect her. She always dressed simply today, in her crisp white blouse tucked neatly into a black skirt. Clean lines. Nothing flashy. She wanted to blend in, but somehow she never did. Her quiet beauty was the kind that drew eyes, though not always kind ones. And today, the eyes were cruel. From the back of the room came the sound of sneakers dragging against the floor. A tall figure stepped forward, casting his shadow across Elena's desk. Ryan Keller. The kind of boy whose name was whispered in hallways, captain of the basketball team, adored by teachers, feared by anyone weaker. His varsity jacket gleamed red against the morning light, a badge of arrogance more than achievement. "Hey, Ice Queen," he said, his smirk curving in slow motion. "Why don't you ever smile? Maybe if you weren't so uptight, people would actually like you." A few snickers rose from his friends in the corner. Elena's grip on her pen tightened. She didn't answer. She never answered. Ryan leaned closer, eyes narrowing, searching for the smallest crack in her armor. And then, without warning, he reached forward. His fingers hooked into her blouse, and in one cruel, thoughtless pull, the fabric tore open with a sickening rip. The classroom gasped. A few hands flew to mouths. A burst of laughter followed, sharp and cutting. Elena froze. Her breath caught in her chest. Her white blouse hung in tatters, exposing the lace edge of her camisole. Heat flooded her face, not just from shame, but from something far stronger. Something she had buried for too long. For a split second, everyone thought she would cry. That she would run out of the room, humiliated, broken. That was the script they were expecting. But Elena did not run. She rose. Slowly, deliberately. Her chair screeched against the tiles as she stood. Her chest rose and fell, her storm gray eyes locked on Ryan's smug face. She said nothing. Instead, she planted her foot against the leg of her desk and with all the force she'd been swallowing for years, she kicked it forward. The desk shot across the floor, crashing into the row ahead with a sound like thunder cracking the sky. Papers flew into the air, chairs rattled against the floor, and a deafening silence fell over the classroom. Every eye was on her now. Not because she was quiet, not because she was weak, but because she had just shattered the illusion of her fragility. Ryan's smirk vanished. His friends stopped laughing. The only sound was the echo of the desk still vibrating against the floor. Elena's voice cut through the stillness, low and steady, but sharp enough to slice through steel. "Don't you ever touch me again." The words lingered in the air, heavier than any scream. And before I take you deeper into Elena's journey, let me pause for just a moment. If stories like this speak to you, if you believe in the power of courage, resilience, and the human spirit, I'd love for you to join me at Soul Touch Stories. Subscribe now, so you'll never miss the kind of stories that remind us why voices like Elena's matter. The silence in that classroom stretched long. Ryan shifted back, his bravado faltering. Behind him, his friends looked down at their desks, suddenly finding their notebooks very interesting. No one dared laugh again. But inside Elena's chest, her heart was pounding like a war drum. She didn't just stand up to Ryan, she had stood up to years of whispers, insults, and silent cruelty. And though the room was silent, Elena knew this was far from over. That night, sitting at her desk by the window, Elena traced her fingers over the ripped blouse she had stuffed into her bag. The fabric was torn, jagged, almost beyond repair. She could still hear the laughter in her ears, but she could also feel the power of the silence that followed her defiance. Her mother's words echoed in her mind, "Sometimes the world will try to break you, Elena. When it does, don't let it. Sharpen instead." For years, Elena had been waiting for someone to stand up for her. But maybe that was the problem. Maybe she had been waiting for the wrong person. The days that followed were strange. Whispers followed her down the hallway, not mocking anymore, but curious. Some admired her courage. Others pretended not to notice her at all, guilty of having laughed along with Ryan in the past. Ryan himself avoided her. His swagger dimmed in her presence, his eyes flicking away whenever she passed. But bullies rarely change overnight. His silence was more of a retreat, a waiting game. Elena began to notice something within herself. A strength she hadn't known she possessed. In English class, when her teacher asked for volunteers to read aloud, she raised her hand. Her voice shook at first, but as the words flowed from the page, it steadied. Students who once ignored her now listened. She started writing more in her notebook. Poems that spilled her pain onto paper. Stories where quiet girls became warriors, where silence was not weakness but a weapon. She pinned one of her poems on the school's bulletin board. By the next day, she saw other students lingering in front of it, whispering, nodding. It was the beginning of something. Weeks later, in the cafeteria, Elena noticed a scene unfolding that was all too familiar. A shy girl named Hannah was cornered by the same group of boys who had once laughed at Elena. Their voices dripped with mockery, circling her like vultures. Elena stood up. Her tray clattered onto the table as she walked forward, her step steady, her eyes unflinching. She planted herself between Hannah and the boys. If you want to humiliate her, Elena said, her voice clear and resonant, you'll have to go through me. The cafeteria went silent. Not the silence of fear this time, but of awe. Hannah's wide eyes filled with tears, not of shame, but of relief. Slowly, one by one, other students stood. Not everyone, but enough to shift the balance. Ryan and his friends backed off, muttering under their breath. But the damage to their power was done. Elena had become more than the quiet girl. She had become a force. In the weeks that followed, her confidence grew. She began to write speeches, stories, and poems for the school assembly. Students who had once overlooked her began to find strength in her words. Teachers praised her courage. Her reputation shifted from invisible to undeniable. And yet, she never forgot the loneliness of the bathroom stall, the sting of whispered insults, the sound of fabric tearing. Those scars did not disappear. But they became part of her story, a story she owned. And before we close Elena's journey, let me ask something from you. If her story has moved you, if it reminded you of your own battles or gave you strength, I'd love for you to like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to Soul Touch Stories. Every interaction helps spread these voices further. Years later, Elena would look back at that day in the classroom. The day her blouse was ripped, the day she kicked the desk. She didn't see a victim anymore. She saw the moment she refused to be broken. Because sometimes, it only takes one act of defiance to change the way the world sees you and the way you see yourself. Elena chose not to break. She chose to rise. And that's the truth I leave you with, you don't need anyone's permission to stand tall. Your voice, your courage, your strength, they are already inside you, waiting. And when the world tries to silence you, remember Elena. Remember the desk crashing against the floor, the silence that followed. Because one voice, when it finally speaks, can quiet an entire room.